Hello, this is Debbie from Organic Oasis in California, Zone 9B. Today, we're going to go out and harvest celery that is starting to bolt. I'm going to go ahead and start harvesting it, and I plan to chop it up and freeze some of it. I may dehydrate some of it. But today, we're going to be making a crockpot chicken and garden veggie stew. And in this stew, we're going to be using chicken breasts, organic chicken breasts. And I just recently harvested some of my beets from my garden, and we'll be putting these wonderful beets, veggies in the stew. I'll be harvesting my celery, probably about 3 stalks of the celery, cleaning it really well and chopping that up and throwing that in the stew. I'll be using some just store-bought organic carrots. And then I'll be throwing in at the very end when it's all done a bunch of our fresh harvested chopped kale. This is some that I had in the fridge, but we need to go out and I need to cut a lot more of it today. I also decided I'm going to try making kale chips. I have never done that before, but I have so much kale I need to use. I'm going to try that. So stick with us today and let's get started on this crockpot chicken and veggie stew, and it'll be a delicious and nutritious meal. We're out at the garden, and here is the celery plant that I'm going to be starting to harvest. Today, I'm going to take just a few stalks to make the chicken stew, and I might take a few stalks to chop and freeze. It's really hard to get down in there and cut the celery, so I'm going to be actually using my big pruners here. Here is the kale plant I'm talking about. It's a mammoth. This kale has been growing like crazy, and I've been using it. And as you can see, I've been cutting the bottom leaves. So today I'm just going to keep cutting from the bottom and keep harvesting from the bottom. As you can see, this is starting to bolt. There's a flower right on the top here. But I'm going to go ahead and just keep cutting from the bottom. I've been researching and I'm understanding that this plant can live a couple years. I just need to keep that main stalk intact. So I'm just going to keep cutting the leaves and then leave the stalk and do an experiment and see if I can get this plant to survive for another year. So let's go ahead though and let's cut the celery and cut some of these kale leaves. Okay, so here is the celery. I just saw a pill bug running around in here. So I tried cutting some stalks yesterday. It was really hard to get, even with a little saw, to cut through it. So I'm going to use these shears and I'm just going to see if I can cut. Let's see. I'm going to try to cut another one of these, a couple of these stalks here. Okay, I'm getting in here with my shears to see if I can cut some of the celery. It's a little hard to cut it. And as I'm getting in here, there's ants. And I know ants mean that there's going to be aphids. Because where there's ants, there's aphids. I'm not happy about that. Okay, I'm going to put the celery down here. I'm just going to start cutting. Whatever extra celery I get, I'm going to just chop it up and freeze it. Yeah, there is a lot of ants in here. Oh, there's also some bird or something buried an acorn. There's also, I'm just going to cut a bunch of this. Okay, oops, drop that. I just saw a ladybug. Again, that's a sign there's aphids here. Okay. I'm going to be making some borax traps today. I'm getting sick of these ants. Okay. Cutting all the small stalks, not the big ones yet. So now for the kale, I've got 2 kale plants in here, so it's hard to see what's what, but I'm cutting the kale from the first plant. I'm cutting the stems. Any stems you see on the bottom are from the second plant. This is the plant I'm going to harvest first. I like the fact that this front plant is actually shading the back kale plant, and that's awesome because it's keeping the back kale plant is actually not, you know, flowering or anything yet because it's being shaded by this plant in front. So I'm just going to cut, I don't need that much kale. I'm just going to cut this much. And as you can see, there's still the top of it here. So as you can see, even though I cut quite a bit of the celery, there's still a lot growing in here. So I have a lot more to harvest. And over here, the kale, as you can see, the front kale has been pretty much stripped up to the top, but I have another whole plant growing in the back that's still doing great. And this was just a 7-gallon bag. So as you can see, 2 kale plants were very healthy and did a good job in a 7-gallon. And also the celery here is in just a 7-gallon bag and it did awesome. Here's my peas. I just noticed I got my first set of peas coming on my little pea plant here. I don't know if you can see the peas. Yay, we're getting peas. Into the kitchen we go. We got to get cooking the stew. So I just came in from the yard and harvested this celery and tons of kale. So now what I'm going to do before we start the recipe, I've got to clean this. I'm going to be stripping the leaves off. Today, I'm just going to be putting the celery leaves into my compost bin. I'll be taking the kale here, the kale leaves, which are huge too, and I've got stalks in here. I'll be taking these and stripping the leaves off. So I'm stripping the leaves off, washing, drying, and chopping. And then the celery, yeah, we'll be taking off I'll be cutting off the leaves for compost, and then I'll be taking the celery stalks and just chopping them. So basically with my kale, I just do a good rinse. Now the kale has pretty much been, healthy. I got a few aphids on the kale plants, but I was able to take care of them with rosemary oil. So I don't worry too much about the kale. There's a few aphids right here. They're white ones. So I'm going to rinse them off with a high stream and my fingers. And just make sure they're gone. You can just rinse them off. Just pull them off and use a stream. And if that doesn't take care of it, just use your fingers. They usually are like to be right in here, kind of a hiding place. And but basically the kale's been pretty healthy. So anyway, so what we're doing here, we're rinsing off. Here's some more aphids. See, this happens a lot too because of they're getting stressed because of the heat, right? So I need to process these. I want to get the kale either frozen and preserved. We're getting like 80-degree days. We're supposed to get up to 100 and something soon. So it's time to get these fall plants processed as much as possible. And so I'm going to go ahead and get all these rinsed, chopped, and I'll be using some in the stew, and then some of it I'm going to be making, I'm going to try making some kale chips. Okay, so the kale is all ready. It's prepped. It's torn into little pieces and cleaned and spun dry and ready to go. Now moving on to the celery. So the celery, as you can see, I've got ants on it, which means there is aphids on this now. I have been watching the celery and there's no aphids on any of the leaves or anything that I can see. But when I started actually harvesting it, there were some aphids up inside the joints of the celery. So I'm going to be really tearing this apart. I'm composting the leaves. I'm only going to be using the celery stalks, cleaning them really good and cutting them up. So I'm going to start by just getting my compost. I have a compost container, and I'll just be throwing in the leaves as I pull them off. I'll be throwing them in here, just like this. I'll be taking these. Okay. Actually, I'm going to use my scissors. So I'll be just I'm going to be just cutting off the leaves like this, the stems that I don't want, and I'll just be cutting off the tips like this. Now this stalk, it's a baby stalk, but I'll be using this, and it's clean, and I'll be setting this on my chopping board. Okay, we got our celery, and we're going to just go ahead and chop it up. So this recipe is calling for 2 to 3 celery stalks. And as you can see, I'm just harvesting this. I'm going to use all of this. There's different sizes of celery. So, I mean, I've got all these little younger celery stalks, and I want to use it all up. Like I said, I need to use it before I lose it, because the weather is going to get kind of hot and it's not going to like it. Now, I can freeze some of this, so I just might do that. I started a little Ziploc baggie where I started chopping it and freezing extra pieces. That way I can freeze it in like 1 cup baggies, and then I'm going to go ahead and put them in my food saver. That way I don't have to blanch them, because I can just put the celery by 1 cup measurements into the food saver, and it sucks all the air out. So it'll keep them nice and green. I won't have any issues with the color. I won't have any issues with the flavor. I won't have to blanch them and do that extra step. This one does not look good. Taking it out. So that's what I plan to do with my celery. Here we go. A nice bowl of celery. Here I have my beets that I harvested, and I just harvested them and put them in my refrigerator and took them out. Luckily, they're still good. And I don't grow a lot of beets. I don't like them that much, but I decided, I had these 2 in the refrigerator that I harvested. I thought, what am I going to do with them? Normally I would juice them and put them in a smoothie, but I decided to go ahead and try this recipe, this stew. So we'll put them in the stew and see how they taste, how it works out. We'll see. But anyway, I'm just going to peel them, and then I'm going to cut them into small pieces. So we're just going to take the beets, and we're just going to chop them. You can cut them into any size that you want. If you want them cubed, you want chopped tiny, or you like big chunks. I'm just going to cut them into small pieces. I feel like, since I don't love beets, if I cut them into small pieces, then I won't be likely to try to pick them out if I don't like them. So the recipe calls for, it calls for 2 to 3 medium beets, peeled and chopped. So this is 2 beets. The beets are all cut up into little cubes. And now I'm moving on to the carrots. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is get the carrots ready. I just use the little organic carrots from Costco. We use them because they're easy to snack on. We like to snack on them with hummus, or we have a parrot that likes to eat them, or dogs like to eat them. And right now I've harvested all my carrots from our garden. I made some delicious soups and things. You can find that on our channel. So now we're just going to use these, and I'm going to just chop them up in our chopper. It's a Hamilton Beach chopper, and it calls for 2 to 3 carrots, but I'm just going to use all of what I had left in the bag. Here we go. So what's nice about chopping up these carrots is that they, when you're making a stew or soup, you can, they just kind of dissolve into the soup and they help thicken it, but you don't get big chunks, if that's what you like. And that's kind of what I like. I like having the vegetables sort of disintegrate into the broth versus like big chunks. So that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm aiming for today. You can, though, cut them any size you want. The chopper is nice. It makes them pretty small. It's more like dicing them versus like chopping them or slicing or anything like that. So let me show you the consistency. So it kind of comes out like this, very tiny pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this. So the next thing we need to do for this stew is to cut the onion. Now, the recipe says the onion is optional, but personally, I think the onion shouldn't be optional, because onions, just like adding garlic, salt, pepper, there are certain basic things that if you leave out, it just isn't going to taste great. It's not going to enhance the flavor. And I mean, I don't know. I use onions in everything, and also mostly garlic, salt, and pepper. Those are kind of my basic things. So it's hard to imagine not putting an onion in a soup or stew. I think you'd really be missing, there'd be something off on the flavor. So anyway, I recommend putting in chopped onion. If you absolutely hate onion, though, and I do have someone in my family that's an onion hater, if it's like something where like you have a child that won't eat anything when they see an onion in it, then by all means don't put in onion. But most of the time, onions just kind of, you don't actually see them. They kind of cook. The longer they cook, especially in a crock pot, they kind of blend in, they soften, they kind of almost become opaque. So you don't even really see them. You can't really pick them out. But I mean, believe me, I know there are kids and people who are like, if it has an onion, I won't even taste it. So that's your decision, however you want to handle that. Luckily, our grandson he's 2 years old, but boy, is he a good eater. If I'm eating it, he wants it. Okay, so our onion's nice and chopped up. Okay, so we are now at the point where we need to layer the veggies into this crock pot. Okay, so there's no particular order of how to layer them, but I'm just going to go ahead, and I think I will just start by putting in some onion on the bottom, carrots, celery, beets, kale. Well, the kale goes in at the end, so no kale. Some garlic, just using the Costco stuff. And I'm going to put in, it's 4 garlic cloves, so I'll put in 4 teaspoons. Okay, keep layering, put in some more carrots. I'm using a lot of carrots. Put in some more celery, more beets. Put in all the rest of the onion. I'll push this a little bit closer so you can see. And I'm also going to use all the rest of the carrots. Okay. So right now I have emptied all of my carrots, all of the beets, all of the garlic that I needed to use. And the only thing is, I'm not sure I want all this celery in here. I think I'm going to keep this and freeze it and just keep that amount of celery. I've layered quite a bit. I don't want it too strong of a flavor there. We have all of the vegetables layered in here nicely. We're going to go ahead now and we're going to add the chicken over the top of this. I use just I'm using the organic chicken breast. You can use chicken thighs. Try to use skinless, boneless, and organic if you can. And it calls for about 1.5 to 2 pounds. This is a little under, it's like 1 pound, 3 ounce, but it's just Tim and I, so I'm going to go ahead and just use this. So I have my 2 chicken breasts here. Now we put the seasonings on, and it's about 1 teaspoon of sea salt. I'll just sprinkle over the chicken, and about a half a teaspoon of black pepper. I'm just going to use my Kirkland black pepper. My pepper grinder is running out and I need to refill it. And you can use thyme or Italian seasoning. I have my Italian seasoning here, and I'm just going to use a generous teaspoon of the Italian seasoning. And then over the top, you could put more spice on here, more herbs if you like. It only calls for the salt, pepper, and the Italian seasoning or thyme. And but you know, feel free to add more. Now I'm going to put in the chicken bone broth, chicken sipping bone broth, and I'm going to go ahead and add that. Now here's the important part. So this is a stew. If you like a thick stew, you might only want to put in 2 cups of broth, and you could use vegetable broth, bone broth, chicken broth. If you like more of a liquidy, brothy type of stew, then you would use the whole 4 cups. You can use 3 cups if you want. I'm going to use all 4 cups. The recipe actually had one part of it that said if you want to make it thicker, you could take and put four cups in and then add, you know, you can take cornstarch and thicken it with cornstarch. I don't like to do that. I don't want to put cornstarch in my soup or my stew. Also, it talked about adding lentils. So a natural way to thicken soups or stews would be to throw a handful of lentils in, and that would help thicken it up. I don't happen to have lentils. The other point is just put in less broth. Put in 2 cups instead of 4 cups. One other option you can do is when it's done cooking, you can take your little blender. I have my blender, my KitchenAid. I'm forgetting what they're called. Anyway, my little KitchenAid blender, immersion blender. Take your kitchen little immersion blender and just immersion blend part of it, and that would like puree the vegetables and also would help thicken it. So there's a lot of things you can do once it's done cooking, and you can decide if you need to thicken it and how you want to thicken it. But I'm going to go ahead and get this cooking. So I've got my, we went ahead and put in all the vegetables. We put in the beets and the carrots and the celery and the onion and the garlic. We put the salt, pepper, Italian seasoning, and we poured the broth on. And now we can cook it on low for 6 to 8 hours in the crock pot or high for 3 to 4 hours. At the very end, when it's done cooking, then you put in your kale, you put it in the last 30 to 45 minutes. You would throw that in to soften it. And then you're going to take your chicken out and shred your chicken and put the shredded chicken back in. And then you're going to add a half a lemon squeezed. And that adds brightness to it. You can also add a tablespoon of olive oil for richness. I don't plan to do that. You can eat this as a stew over rice, quinoa, farro, or you can just use it as a nice soupy kind of stew with broth, which is what I plan to do. So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and start cooking. Okay, so I've got this cooking now. I went ahead and put it all on my in my Ninja cooking system, Crockpot, and I'm just going to go ahead and cook it on high for 3 hours and see if the chicken will be soft enough to shred up. Let's come back in 3 hours and check it out. The Crockpot has been going for about 3.5 hours. And so I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to pull the chicken out so that I can shred it up. And I'm going to go ahead and throw the kale in here. And this just needs to be in here for about 30 minutes so it can wilt. So actually this is pretty liquidy. It's looking like it is pretty liquidy, and it's very red because of the beets. So interesting. It's going to be a very interesting stew. Well, once I put the chicken in too, it's going to really thicken it up more. So I won't judge it yet until we get the shredded chicken back in. Okay. I have the chicken all shredded up, and I'm going to go ahead and put it back in the crock pot with the kale while the kale is wilting. Now let's see how it looks. Now, see, now that's looking a lot better. Now that the chicken is in here, it's very much looking like a thicker stew. Now, remember what I said. If you don't like it, we'll see when I plate it and try it and taste it. It's got to go another 30 minutes. Um, I'm actually not eating it tonight because it's like here in California, it's like getting late. It's like 8 o'clock. So I'm going to wait. We're going to eat this tomorrow. So when I plate this tomorrow and taste it, we'll get to see how it is. But if, like I said earlier, if you want a thicker stew, you could have put in, like I could have put in 2 cups of liquid of the broth instead of 4, or I could have put in 3, and then we wouldn't have had all this liquid. Now, if you like liquid but you want it thicker, we could have thrown in some lentils. I could take my immersion blender and I could kind of blend up some of the vegetables to thicken it. But I think right now I just want to try it just the way it is. So let's let it keep cooking. We've got another 23 minutes. And then when I plate it up, we'll see how it tastes. The stew is done and it looks delicious. Now, true confessions, was finished last night, but so late that Tim and I grabbed something else to eat for dinner. So we're having it for dinner tonight. Now, it looks delicious. The kale is a little dark because it did cook yesterday and then I had to heat it up again today. But it looks delicious. Now, you're supposed to squeeze half of a fresh lemon into this now. And I just realized the lemons are all gone and I've been relying on it for like 7 months. So now I have no fresh lemons, but I did squeeze a bunch of lemons and I froze ice cubes. So I'm going to go ahead and just stick one of my frozen lemon juice ice cubes in here. Now I'll just stir it up and wait for that to melt. And once it's melted, I will blend it in and I will plate it up and do a taste test. The lemon cube has blended in here. It's melted and I've stirred it up. So now I'm going to go ahead and just put it in bowls for Tim and I to eat. I want you to see this. It's really looks really delicious. It's got a lot of chicken. You can see the kale and the beets. You can see some of the carrots. You can't see too much of the celery. Remember when I was talking, I was worried about how much of the broth was in it, but there really isn't that much broth. Now, I woke up this morning thinking I should make rice to go with this. This just seems like a dish that would be really good with over rice, or maybe even pasta or quinoa, farro, whatever type of grain that you like. But we're just having it just like this. I'm getting ready to taste this chicken stew with garden veggies, and I'm excited to try it. It's very good. Very, very good. The kale is delicious in it. The beet the essence is throughout the entire dish, but it's not a strong beet flavor. But if you didn't like beets, you would not probably like this because it does taste like beets. You can definitely taste the beets. And there's so many beets in here, you would not be able to pick them out. But like me, I'm not a beet lover, but I can tolerate this. And if you did serve this over rice or some type of grain, it would soften the beet flavor because you could mix like 50% rice, 50% of the stew, and you just wouldn't have as much of the stew. Oh, my dog wants this. Someone is barking at me. That's not, you can't beg, Benny. But anyway, so it's very good. Growing beets, they're fun. They're a root crop. I basically planted mine, I believe, in the fall. And they went through winter, and I harvested them the beginning of spring. They've been in my refrigerator for quite a while, though. They're a root crop, and kind of like a carrot. If you store them properly, I put them in a Ziploc bag with a moist paper and with a paper towel to kind of absorb their moisture. And they did fine. And so they were stored for a while. But you can't really see them growing. So and they do take a while to grow. I think for kids, I would stick with carrots, but for beets, if you enjoy beets and you like beets, I would try growing them. There's lots of different types. The ones I grew were Detroit Reds, which is giving the lovely red flavor to the and color to the broth and to the dish. So thank you for following Organic Oasis in California. And comment below if you tried this dish and what you think of it. If you have other recipes that you like to use your kale, celery, and beets. And if you grow beets and what type of beets you grow. Thank you for joining our community and for sticking with us and watching our videos. And we'd love to be a part of your community as well. Thank you so much.